Man has weird round spots on finger. When the doctors see it, they call the cops. Henry had a good reason to become alarmed when he discovered a strange spot on his finger. The cause was unknown, but Henry had no idea whether the symptom could pose a threat to his life. When Henry was diagnosed, the doctor dialed the police right away. Henry was forced to enter the hospital room without any explanation. After performing tests, the doctor immediately left the room to call the police when he received the results. Henry, left alone in the hospital room, becomes alarmed when he realizes how critical his condition might be. The doctor was forced to tell Henry what he had discovered. Henry collapsed to the floor upon hearing the physician's diagnosis. So what did the physician find? What is the cause of the spot on Henry's finger? And why were the police called to the scene? When Henry woke up that morning, it seemed like a day like any other day. He woke up with his alarm clock and got out of bed and got to the kitchen to brew some coffee. 40-year-old Henry is a bachelor. Although he has dated before, he's never been in a romantic relationship. But this time he hoped would be different. He had high hopes for his first encounter with a new woman, but everything soon went terribly wrong. Although he believed the likelihood that they would click was small, Henry decided to meet the woman he had met online. The date wasn't particularly memorable, and she didn't seem particularly interested in him. Henry discovered his finger wasn't working properly the morning following the date. He felt a prickling pain in the digit. The reason for his sore finger became clear upon closer inspection. Henry is horrified when he sees a strange sight. But why is he acting this way? Henry's finger was covered in tiny spots. He initially believed that something was stuck to his finger, but upon closer inspection, what he was looking at was clearly a bunch of spots. Henry paused to consider what might have caused this. He might have been bitten by a bug or had a parasite infection. Maybe he woke up in the middle of the night with a bug stuck to his finger. Henry became more and more baffled as he continued to examine his finger. There must be something in the spot, he thought to himself. Henry made the choice to use tweezers to extract the object from his finger. He found the tweezers and went to the bathroom, but he hesitated as he fixed his gaze on his finger. Henry hated to be around hospitals. He likes to handle things by himself, except in extreme cases. He rarely visits the doctor. But this time, he had to visit the doctor because he couldn't figure out this issue himself. Henry finally decides to call the hospital. He was able to schedule a somewhat urgent appointment for later that day. There are a number of patients I need to see before you, but I can definitely see you later today, the doctor said on the phone. The doctor then asked Henry if he could do something for him. Have you done anything recently that could have triggered these symptoms? The doctor asked Henry. Please let me know if you did something even slightly different. Henry thought back on the previous week. There wasn't much that was different from usual, in his opinion. He recently went on a hike in the woods, and perhaps he touched something he shouldn't have. Henry continued to reflect and concluded that the hike couldn't be to blame. It's a well-traveled path. There must be a large number of people who have chosen the same path. There must be many people with the same symptoms if my hike was the cause of this. Henry was convinced that his hike was the cause, but he couldn't be sure. It was hard for Henry to consider what else in his routine could have caused his symptoms. Henry is just a normal guy, and besides, the occasional hike or going out to a nice restaurant every once in a while. He doesn't do much else outside of his apartment. He works from home and doesn't go out often. I remember going out on a date the night before. I talked with her for a while online, and we finally went out together. Henry had been so excited to test the waters with her. He was still looking for his soulmate, and he was hoping the date would go well, but things didn't really turn out that way. From the moment they met each other, Henry felt that something was off with his date. She didn't seem to show any interest in him, despite being very friendly online. She seemed to really dislike Henry, but once Henry expressed this to her, she changed and became very friendly again. Looking back on it, Henry wasn't sure why she reached out to him to begin with. While reading her past messages again, Henry now thought it was clear that she didn't like him much to begin with. Henry didn't think that she could have anything to do with his symptoms because the date never progressed past the restaurant. Henry hadn't even heard from her since they parted ways that night. On his way to the doctor's appointment, Henry still had no clues about what happened to his finger. He tried to jog his memory in the car, but nothing came to mind. Henry still had no other possible causes of his finger condition in mind when he arrived at the hospital. After taking a deep breath to calm down, Henry finally walked into the clinic. He expected a long wait to actually see the doctor, but they let him in almost immediately. While he was waiting, Henry noticed a lot of other people in the room staring at him. The spots in his finger were clearly visible, and people didn't even hide their shocked looks. The other patients in the room were clearly curious about Henry's condition. Children in the room even tried to get a close-up look at his injury before their parents stopped them. When the doctor called out the name of his next patient, something unexpected happened. The patient himself stood up and told the doctor to examine Henry first. The doctor who was performing the checkup on Henry was clearly intrigued by his situation. "I've never seen anything like this before," he said to himself. What Henry didn't know was that the doctor couldn't remember any patient with similar symptoms or any similar cases in any medical book. The doctor told Henry that his issue might take some time to diagnose. He then transferred his next appointments to another doctor in the building. He needed to devote all of his time and energy to Henry's ailment. After the exam, the doctor continued to look at Henry's finger while he waited for the test results. Strangely enough, the pain in Henry's finger that had been present all day had just subsided. The first test results came back quickly. They came in while the doctor was examining Henry's finger, and they showed no clear diagnosis. This meant that the doctor would have to do other tests on Henry to find out what was going on. Henry agreed to more testing, although he was reluctant to do so. While awaiting more results, the doctor took a photo of Henry's finger to post an online medical bulletin board. He was hoping that other doctors might recognize what was going on. Henry excused himself to go to the bathroom while his doctor posted the photo online. Almost instantly, a message came in from another doctor, and Henry's doctor was hopeful that someone could solve this mystery. The message from the doctor who had seen the same symptoms before. Her message read, "If we don't act now, everyone, including Henry, will be in big trouble." Just as Henry's doctor finished reading the message, the test results arrived. The chilling results proved the doctor's message was correct. Henry's doctor left the office and things immediately changed. Henry came back from the restroom. The condition of his finger was not good. The spot was starting to spread out into his hand. At this point, he was very scared, but he knew he could immediately show this progress to his doctor. However, there was one problem. "What should I do?" Henry was thinking when he heard a noise behind him. The door he just entered had been locked from the outside. He was locked in the examination room. Henry asked for an explanation through the door, but no one answered. The nurses and doctors were arguing frantically and did not answer Henry's questions. Feeling anxious and frightened, Henry became very worried about his finger when he saw the reaction of the hospital staff. "What's wrong? Am I going to die?" Eventually, fear turned into anger. Why is no one talking to him? Not knowing what else to do, Henry started kicking the door. He was desperate to get out. After a few kicks, the lock broke and the door opened wide. People on the other side screamed. Even the doctor backed off. Henry just stood there breathless. It was hard to kick the door open, but he desperately wanted someone to explain what was going on. The doctor yelled at the other staff members, "Stay away from him," and told Henry, "Stay back." No one should come near him. The fear in the doctor's voice told Henry's fate, but his heart was made up. Before the doctor could even begin to speak, 3 armed policemen entered the ward and found Henry. The doctor pointed at Henry and shouted, "It's him!" The officers pulled out their pistols and aimed them at Henry. When the police pointed their pistols at him, Henry raised his hands. With tears in his eyes, he pleaded, "Tell me what's going on." "I'll tell you everything, but I need to quarantine you now," said one cop calmly. Henry agreed, but insisted, "I wouldn't hesitate to kick other doors open to get an answer." Henry returned to the examination room and the door was closed. He saw the staff bring out heavy cleaning supplies. They started cleaning everything, floors, walls, doors. The doctor first apologized for not telling Henry what was going on. "You were scared, so I should have explained what happened," he continued. "I didn't expect a person infected with flesh-eating bacteria to come in today, and I didn't expect to have to do something I hadn't done before." The doctor and Henry discussed what he had been doing the day before. Henry went hiking and went out on a date that night. Luckily for Henry, it wasn't a bad date that caused his punctured finger. Henry had no idea which plant was the problem. He told the police and doctors the route he had taken and what he thought might be a clue to the cause. He didn't know what else to do. More than that, he couldn't help but wonder, how will it be treated? Can it be treated? Or will the virus eat his hands? Luckily, the hospital had the medicine Henry needed, but he had to isolate himself for a while. The police got into trouble because they had to question Henry about the hike, but when he came out of the isolation room, doctors panicked, and so did the police. Hospital staff had to make sure no one else got infected. Henry was safely transported to another hospital where he was able to remain in isolation while being treated for the fungus that eroded his hands. Officers closed off the hiking trail after a frantic search. They found plants that were not supposed to be in the area. Upon examination, the plant was found to be the cause of Henry's symptoms and was uprooted.